With that, I want to go ahead and welcome our guest. We have a reporter from Spectrum One News. He is an Emmy Award-winning reporter and has also been a recipient of the Golden Mike Award. That is Ariel Wesler. And Ariel, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, John. Pleasure to be here. Good to see, not see all of you. I guess you can see me. I can't see you, but really great to be here with all of you to talk about my career and how I got into this.
Sure, thank you, Ariel. Well, let's just start with talking about who you are, what you do at Spectrum, a little bit about just your background in that field.
Sure. So my name is Ariel Wesler. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley here in Los Angeles, born and raised, and I've been working at Spectrum. It's going to be 5 years in August, and I'm a reporter for them, reporter what we call an MMJ, which is a multimedia journalist, because I write, I shoot, and I edit stories that go on television for an 8 o'clock program. So I work for a show on Spectrum called Inside the Issues. And it's Monday through Friday evening, and I basically put stories on air for Tuesday and Thursday. So my stories air twice a week, and they're completely done by me. There's a team of producers that I work with, and we'll pitch ideas back and forth. We'll take ideas from the community, and then I will go out and I'll set them up. I'll try to schedule interviews. I will go out and I will shoot the interviews. And I will write the stories when they come back, and I will edit it together. And the finished product airs between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then I post to the web. So you're really in charge of a lot of different things. The industry has changed even since I started 15 years ago.
Oh, that's fascinating. Well, thank you for sharing that. I know that you grew up here in Los Angeles. Can you talk a little bit about your experience, in high school and where you went to college?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, I went to elementary school in the Valley, and then I went to Nobel Middle School in Northridge, and my parents moved across to Tarzana, and I went to high school in Taft High School, and I was there from 9th through 12th grade, and I thought I wanted to be a doctor, actually, until I was in 11th grade, and I started writing for the high school newspaper. And I realized that this was something I was really interested in. I've always loved to write, and I really love history. And so those two things were what really kind of drew me into journalism, because you're really writing the first draft of history. You go out on an assignment, and you are the one that's kind of gathering the information and getting it out there as quickly as possible for people, and kind of setting a record of what happened on this particular day, if you look at it from a large perspective. So I started writing for my high school newspaper. I did that for an 11th and 12th grade. And then I knew there were really two events that made me choose TV journalism. One of them was the Millennium Celebration in the year 2000. There was ABC News. So my parents always had the news on growing up. And we watched Peter Jennings, who was an anchor for ABC News at the time. And they did a whole and a lot of you may not remember this, but for the year 2000, they did a whole broadcast where they rang in the new year from all over the world. So they started kind of in the South Pacific, near Australia, New Zealand, and each time zone they broadcast. And I just thought visually that was the most incredible thing, to see how the world was celebrating the new year in various countries around the globe. And then 2001 was 9/11. And it's crazy to think now with social media and our phones, but at the time there was no Twitter, there really was no Facebook. And so everybody ran to their TVs. And I remember being in high school, I was in 11th grade, and my teacher in drama class actually had us journal and write what we were thinking, what we were feeling. And everybody was just, everybody was desperate for information. And I was thinking how honorable it would be to kind of be on the scene there, trying to get people information when they desperately needed it. And just the visual element of television really struck me. And I graduated in 2003 from Taft, and I was hoping to either go to USC or UCLA. I grew up in a UCLA family, but when I discovered that I really wanted to go into broadcast journalism specifically, I was really interested in USC's program, and I did not get in as a freshman. In fact, the only school I applied to 6 different colleges, and I got waitlisted to one of them, rejected from 5 of them. And I got into UC Riverside, and I got waitlisted to Boston University, and eventually got in. But I decided at the time that I was not ready. I went over to BU to check it out, and they had a good communications program, but I wasn't ready at the time to go back east. So I decided to go to Santa Monica College, junior college, and I went for a year, and I kind of got all my prerequisites out of the way. And I will tell you, at the time, I was not happy about this because I really wanted to go to a 4-year university out of college, or right out of high school. But looking back, it saved me a lot of money, saved me a lot of time. And one of my favorite broadcast classes today was at Santa Monica College to date, and it was Intro to Broadcasting. And so I loved it. So I got my prereqs out of the way. I transferred to USC as a sophomore and got into their journalism program, and kind of soaked up as much information as I could. They have a college TV station, and their news station is called Annenberg TV News. And we had a daily newscast 4 days a week, and same thing, we were practicing writing, shooting, editing. So it was the best hands-on experience that I could ask for. And I graduated in 2007 with a degree, a bachelor's in broadcast journalism and a minor in theater. And I had put a reel together, and that's kind of what you do in this business. You gather clips of yourself, and I can show you some. And you send it out there, and you apply for a job, and you hope that there's some news director somewhere in the country that is looking at your reel and like what they see, and they hire you. And so that's kind of the process. It's you get a little. It's like a 6-minute video that you put together of your work, and you hope somebody hires you, and you generally will end up starting in a very small town and working your way up.
Well, that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing your journey through your education and getting into through college. Do you want to share us with us
Video?
the
Sure. Let me see, just so you can get an idea of kind of what I do here. Let me do this. Yeah, this is what I wanted to show you. So here's a little montage of just some of the work that I do in the field.
Recognize this, it is the LAX theme building. It is an LA icon, of course, and one of the first things that visitors see when they land here at the airport. And Paul Revere Williams was part of the LAX team that designed it. Assemblymember Miguel Santiago on yet another delay for a new form of federal identification. Plus, what big changes in healthcare providers might mean for some of the neediest patients. And an unprecedented move to provide funding to help young Californians in need. This is Inside the Issues. How would you like to fly to work? Well, that's the idea from one company after they heard about a report last year that ranked LA as having the worst traffic in the world for the 6th year in a row. They're like, enough is enough. We're standing here on Ventura Boulevard near Woodman, and you can see behind me where crews have filled in some of the potholes. There's some fresh asphalt there. But no matter who you ask, the city, the county, or Caltrans, they have all seen significantly more potholes this year compared to the same time last year, and tire shops are seeing the results. Happy New Year, everybody. And as we kick off 2023, we're going to take some time today to look back on some of the interviews and stories In Focus SoCal covered throughout 2022. What do you find at this point is the biggest challenge to get people signing up? I know the DMV at times does not have the best reputation as far as convenience. I know California has been trying to change that, but what do you hearing from people as to why they waited so long? A Metro even had me tested out. I put on some goggles that blocked most of my vision, and I could really experience what Mark was experiencing. And I was surprised by how specific the directions were. Ian joins us now from Washington. Cassie, with the House on its summer break, Californian and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is leading a delegation to Southeast Asia. So what's the significance of this trip? We are here on Ben Avenue, east of Laurel Canyon Boulevard. They just had this speed hump installed about 2 weeks ago. But as I found out, this process is so competitive. One neighbor says it's like getting concert tickets. The concept of curling is fairly simple. Try to get this 42-pound rock as close to the center of the circle as possible. But in reality, there's a lot more to it.
So that's kind of a little taste of some of the work that I do. So those are kind of stand-ups, those are live shots that I'll do at the scene sometimes. And you'll see from that, I cover a variety of stories. So I'm what they call a general assignment reporter. And in this business, you usually start out that way. You cover a variety of topics. So I like, if you're someone who loves to learn constantly, this is a great career for you because you're covering something different every single day. And you're out talking to people. And I just learn a lot about LA. I learn a lot about different industries, and you're kind of constantly learning, and it's challenging because you're supposed to be, by the time you're ready to put your story on and talk about it at the end of the day, like you saw in some of those live shots, people are looking to you as kind of the expert to let them know, and so there is pressure there as well to kind of make sure you have the facts right, you have the information right that you just learned. When you woke up this morning, I didn't know anything about speed humps or the process for, getting speed bumps on a street. And then at the end of the day, you have to be confident enough to talk about it and how that process works. So, and that's all practice. That's why you start in a small town if this is what you want to do, because you make your mistakes. That's kind of your graduate school. So I don't have a graduate degree, and a lot of my colleagues don't in this business because the best experience is just to get out there and start working. And so my very first market, so we say market, that's kind of the television markets across the country. There are 210 of them, like LA being number 2, New York is number 1. So the larger the city, the smaller the number, and it kind of goes from there. So, New York 1, LA 2, Chicago 3. Glendive, Montana is 210. I started in Bend, Oregon, which is 194. And I did everything. I did weather, I did producing, writing the newscast, picking the stories. And at 22 years old, it was amazing. I mean, just to be able to choose what stories people are going to get to see, what you think is the most important. It was really exciting.
Well, the career is very important, and it seems very fun and exciting. So can you walk us through a typical day at work?
Yeah, so a typical day for me, this job is actually interesting because I'm only on twice a week. I'm on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So a typical day, what I'll do is I will look at a calendar and what I have planned. So I will set up a shoot. The job that I'm doing now is remote. I don't necessarily have to go in to the office. I have to go in on Tuesdays and Thursdays when I'm in studio. But other than that, I'm in the field. So let's say I'm doing a story. I'll give you an example. I just did a story the other day on a new medical procedure that was being tested at USC. And so I basically, a typical day in the morning, I would go and I would set up my interview. So I'd call them, make sure that we're still on for today, because I had set this up in advance. And I'd go to USC and I'd shoot the story. So maybe they'd take me around. So I drive myself, let me put it that way. So they give you a news vehicle, back up. They give you a news vehicle to drive. So and that's a vehicle in this job that I can take home. So basically I leave from home, get in my car. I've got my camera. Sometimes I will also shoot on my cell phone, because it's crazy. By the time all of you may decide to do this, everybody might be shooting on their phones, because the camera is so good on these modern iPhones and smartphones, that we aren't using the huge cameras that we used to use when I started. So sometimes I'll just shoot on my phone, and they give us like microphones that we can attach to it, so the sound is really good. So it's really broadcast quality. So I'll get in the car, I will drive to my shoot. So in this case, let's say USC Health Sciences campus, and I will go in there. I will meet with a PR person. This is usually somebody that will have helped me set up the story, like someone from their communications department. And they'll take me to where I can shoot what's going on. If there's a patient that's going through, say, this experimental procedure, and I will get video of it, different angles. You learn, like I learned in school, how to shoot. It's kind of like, in a sense, filmmaking, and you're getting different angles, you're getting close-ups, you're getting wide shots. And I'll get the story, I'll shoot everything I need. I'll do, say, a couple of interviews. So maybe I interview the patient who is going through this, and I'll interview the doctor. And then I will get in my car, I will come back, and I will review what I shot. So I'll look at the interviews first, and I'll pick out what we call sound bites. So say I do a 5-minute interview, my stories are generally only 2 to 2.5 minutes. So I have to sift through those, find the best, sound bites, what I like that they said, what really stood out to me. And in broadcast, we really look for the emotion in what people are talking about. We'll report the facts in the writing, but we want, for this patient maybe going through this experimental procedure, what has this been like for you? Were you concerned? How might this save your life? You go back to the basics, the who, what, where, when, why. What does this mean for you to be enrolled in this? And so I'll pick the sound bites that I like, clips of their interview. Same thing for the expert. Maybe the doctor is talking about how long he's been working on this procedure and what this means for him. Is USC the only school that does this? Important facts like that, how many people he's treated. And then I'll pick, same thing, clips from his interview. And then after I have the clips, I'll start writing a script. And the script is supposed to be very conversational. So there are different kinds of journalism you can go into. You can go into print, you can go into broadcast, you can go into online journalism. Print journalism, because you have to paint a picture, you use a lot more words. In broadcast, we write the way we speak, which is why I like it. It's very conversational. And you write a script, and so I'll write my script, put in a sound bite, and then you edit it together. And so the script, think of the script as like your template. Okay, this is where you're going to say something. This is now you're going to play the sound bite. And I put together this 2-minute piece, and it basically, let me see if I have something I can. Do I have a second? Can I show you one more thing?
Yeah.
Give you an example of just a story so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about here. This is a story I did on convicts who were basically they'd gotten out of prison and they needed to restart their life, and they're working at a rubber factory in San Bernardino County. Take a look. I'll play you some of this. So this would be a story that I put together. I wrote, I edited, I shot.
The U.S. rubber recycling factory in Colton, Carlos Arceo is a second shift manager.
This is my first job ever. I've never worked in my life.
The company turns old California truck tires into products such as rubber flooring for home gyms. Its sales jumped more than 60% in just 9 months last year.
This here is our tile line where we slice the blocks.
Before working here, Arceo had been living a criminal lifestyle until it caught up with him and he was sent to prison for almost a decade.
At the time when I was incarcerated, I left 2 daughters, my wife, and now I have a son, a 6-month-old son.
He says they inspired him to ultimately turn his life around and put the past behind him for good. Arceo is part of U.S. Rubber's Bounce Back program, which gives ex-felons like him a fresh start. In his 2 years here, he's already received multiple promotions.
I do remember my first paycheck, and I looked at it and I said, wow.
Our plant manager, ex-felon, been here for 20 years. Our assistant plant manager, ex-felon, been here since 2006.
President and CEO Jeff Baldessari says as many as 2/3 of his workers have done time.
Not a bad person, I made a bad decision.
And it's usually almost impossible for them to find a job once they get out.
They will fill out an application. They'll check the box felon. That's the end of the application process.
He says on paper, it doesn't make much sense to hire them. Most have no previous experience or have only worked a few months at several different places. He was seeing 65 to 70% turnover.
These are individuals for many, many years have been told how worthless they are, how much of a drag on society they are. They don't deserve anything. They committed a crime, whatever it may be. And they start to believe that.
He knew he had to change the work culture, so he enlisted the help of a psychiatric rehab counselor. She's a resource and someone the employees can talk to confidentially.
Someone has to teach them, how do you deal with relationships? How do you deal with your coworkers? What's a proper response? What's a proper reaction?
Oh, it's a whole total different environment, day by day, 8-hour shifts. You get tired. We're not used to this type of environment. We just got to accept it and fit into it.
Baldessari says hiring ex-felons allows him to keep up with demand and quickly expand his workforce, jobs few others will take.
If we didn't have that talent source to tap into with ex-felons, we wouldn't be able to do this. There's no question about it.
He says watching his employees transition and become productive members of society is a priceless feeling.
And after 6 months to a year, you start seeing their chests come out. They're proud.
I had clean hands with dirty money. Now I got dirty hands with clean money.
And as for Arceo,
My whole family, they're still kind of shocked to see what I've overcome and how far I've made it since my release from prison. It's just a whole brand new Carlos was reborn again.
Because if anyone knows about transformations, it's a recycling company, giving rubber a second life and former criminals a second chance.
So that's an example of a story then that I put together, and I would go into a booth and you would hear me, I'd record what I wrote on my script. That's what I wanted to show you guys. I'd record the track, as we call it, is what I wrote. And then you'd have those sound bites where you hear from the people. And that's an example of a story, a typical story that would air.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And, I want to pivot for a minute and take some questions because there's a lot of questions coming in from students.
Sure.
One question is, how long did it take to learn the language and approach to speaking like a reporter? You have a distinct way of speaking. So tell us a little bit about how you learned that.
That's funny. So you know what? It's practice. It's in college. So you start writing scripts, and you would laugh at me if you heard some of my scripts when I was in college, because you sound very monotone, like the person did this and then they did that, and so you just learn to have more inflection in your voice. You kind of find your own personality. And the best thing I can say is, like, I took one voice class in college, but you really just have to find your own voice. I mean, you can't control the way you sound, and you don't want to, like, I've had teachers that are like, do not sound like a reporter. You can't force it. You just have to find your own voice, your own personality. And that's just from writing scripts and recording yourself, hearing yourself talk, and doing it over and over again. It kind of just evolves.
How do you think creative writing lends into this field?
That's a great question. So it depends on the stories you're telling. That's why actually I have the job that I have now, because I get to do more feature stories like the one you saw. So you can be more creative with what you say. If you're covering crime or you're covering a fire, what we call spot news, like things that happen day and date, flooding, rain, today. It's hard to be creative because you're just trying to get facts and figures, you're trying to get information out to people. But feature writing, if you're really interested, you could write this. There's a reporter named Steve Hartman who's a master at it. He's on CBS. He was someone that I looked up to in college, and he's still on CBS. So Steve Hartman, fantastic reporter, and he does just amazing emotional features. And so he's a great example of where you can have fun with your writing and it can be more creative.
Here's another question. How do you choose which stories to cover, or what is newsworthy?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's something that's constantly changing. So I'll get emails from people who watch. I have a team of 3 other producers that I work with, and we all get ideas. We'll get PR people, which are public relations. They'll send us stories, say from a particular company that wants us to get a story out there. It'll be individuals. It'll be maybe something that I see. A great way to start telling stories on your own. And again, you guys can do this on your own now with your phone. I mean, you can record, you can go on the sidewalk and record yourself talking in front of the camera. I mean, there's so many ways to do it now. It's easier than ever. You can edit on your phone. But observation, like things that you see, there was, gas prices seem to be getting higher. Why is that? And a simple question like that could then lend itself to a story. Okay, are they higher in a particular part of town? Why is that? And one question may lead to another question. And so I would say, if you're naturally curious, if your parents are like, oh my God, enough with the questions already, this is a great job for you, because that's what you're getting paid to do, is just ask questions that people don't, you get access to all kinds of people, from city leaders, county leaders, depends, if you're a national reporter, the federal government. And you basically have a license to ask questions to anyone you want to figure out, answers to what you want to know or what people want to know. So I know it's a long answer, but it's generally from people, observations, and then public relations people who send us what we call press releases.
Here's another question. What is the most challenging, or could be the most interesting story you've covered?
That's a very good one. So the most challenging story I have covered was probably when I was in Santa Barbara. There was a big rig truck, to make a long story short, that went off the freeway and fell on a home, and it killed 3 people. And I was on the same story for 3 days, and it was really taxing. It was a family of 3, and they didn't speak English, and and then they had me cover the memorial service. The family opened it up to the media, and it was just very emotionally draining. And then on the flip side, one of the best stories I covered was also in Santa Barbara. I got to interview Kobe Bryant at the time, and ask him. He was at the Boys and Girls Club, and he had made a donation, and so we were interviewing him about that. So it's one extreme or the other, really happy to really devastating, and it's a high pressure job because you're up against the deadline.
Right. Here's another question. How are reporters who go to emergency sites chosen, for example, to cover a tragedy or homicide?
Generally, it's our assignment desk. We have an assignment desk in the newsroom that will just pick somebody if they're closest to the, usually if they're closest to the scene, whoever can get there the fastest. If it's a challenging story, they'll send someone with more experience. But honestly, sometimes it's just random. An assignment editor will just say, "Hey, you come in," and they're like, "This is your story for the day."
Here's a question from one of our students. What advice do you have for students that experience setbacks?
For students that keep going. I mean, if this is something that you want, like I said, you can practice. If you wanted to practice doing this on your own, you can shoot with your phone. You can, no one will stop you as a student journalist. Like I would keep at it, is all I can say. It takes a lot of persistence. There are times where I would come back. There are days where I would come back devastated, crying, really defeated. But then you'll have one story. There was a story I did where I helped connect a mother with her son who was in the hospital. She couldn't afford to get out here. And the story, I mentioned that in the story, and people came forward in the community, and they basically paid her way to see her son to get to California so she could be with him. And that made my week, my month perhaps, because I was the reason that she was able to get here, because the community stepped up because they saw the story. So yeah, don't give up. I mean, there are going to be a ton of obstacles. That's natural. Know that that's okay. That's to be expected. And that's only going to make you stronger. I mean, as a reporter, you knock on doors. If someone's like, "I'm sorry, you can't get that information," our job is to be like, "Okay, we'll find another door." You get creative, you find out new ways to kind of get the same thing done. So just be persistent, and that takes practice. So don't be too hard on yourself. You just have to keep going.
Thank you. We've got about 4 more minutes. So students, if you have questions, feel free to keep putting them in the chat. There is a question that came up is, what advice would you give to somebody who's trying to get into this field? Where would they start?
So what I would do is I'd write, if you're in high school now, I would try to write for your high school paper if you can, or just write as much as you can. What I did, a couple of things I did when I was in school was when I knew I wanted to do this, I would take a newspaper, and then I would take that story and I would try to write it in my own words. So take like the facts, read a particular story. It can be a simple story, and take those facts and then try to write the story yourself in your own words for TV. Maybe start out interviewing a family member. Like I said, you guys have the technology now where it's so easy. You truly can shoot a great story with your phone. Interview a grandparent. Seriously, what have you been through? And do a story just for yourself. If you're interested in television, do a story on a family member, profile them, what they've been through, what a day is like, for them, what growing up was like. And then you'll have the video, go through the interview, on your phone, take the parts of the story that you like. And that's basically, that's the essence of what we do. And I would just say, get comfortable being on camera. I was a theater minor in college. You don't have to, but there are a lot of people. You can go into communications, you can go into theater. But I recommend, and again, you can go to community college for this. You don't have to go to a 4-year, but do some kind of writing. I believe Santa Monica College at the time had a broadcast program. But I definitely, you should get a college degree if you can for this. I think it's definitely going to help you. It does not have to be in journalism if you're not sure. A lot of people will do communications as a degree as well, but anything that will get you writing. And like I said, if you're in high school now, try to write for your paper, or if your school does have a video production class, that's something to get into too.
Well, thank you again, Ariel, for taking the time and speaking with us. You know, we really appreciate the work that you do and the reporting that you do for our city and our community.
Thank you so much. It was great, great talking to all of you, and great questions. So there, you're already asking great questions. You're off to a good start. So thank you so much.